Good evening. We are talking about women of the Revolutionary Era, and this video is going to focus on Phillis Wheatley. Now, the National Women's Museum tells us that she was born in Gambia in 1753. She was kidnapped as a girl and brought over to the Americas on a slave ship from which she derived her given name, Phillis. She was sold to John and Susanna Wheatley, whose one of their children actually taught her to read and write. She was freed by way of manumission in 1773 when Mrs. Wheatley died. Um, Fast forward, and the University of Chicago Press tells us that she gained special attention in 1786 when three of her poems were printed in Thomas Clarkson's renowned essays on slavery and the commerce of the human species. And so this was a tremendous feat, not to mention she was the first black author to have a book of poetry published. So, very, very fitting for this discussion. As for our prompt questions, we'll get started. The first one asks, do you think a woman of some other profession would have filled the shoes of a female revolutionary representative? I would say absolutely yes. I think that even given the time that we're speaking about, there were still some very vocal women, some very knowledgeable women, and women that were very capable of articulating very clearly and in such a strong manner their thoughts. For example, one might reference Mercy Otis Warren. Um, as to our second, uh, how important was it to have a famous female from the American Revolution? I think it was tremendously important. A lot of what took place in the history books has much to do with the men of the Revolution, the founding fathers. It was very male focused in terms of history. And so having a woman to kind of bring together um, all of the people of the revolution and to have them represented in tremendous capacity was really, really important. And I think plays a role into why we are even having such a discussion now. Our third question says, does the actual person Elizabeth Claypool still hold importance as a famous icon of Betsy Ross? Uh, in my personal opinion, I'd say no, because these are not the same people. Um, One is fictitious, having the other's imagery. What I think would be more fitting is to tell the actual story of who Elizabeth Claypool was. She may not have been the uh, kind of propagandized character of Betsy Ross, but I think that um, if you're going to use her image, tell her actual story. Do you understand what I think? It's really important that we not overlook um, who she really was, because that matters, and not just her image. And our last question asks, why hasn't writing such as this, challenging the validity of the legend, affected the public praise of Betsy Ross? And I think that's because the character of Betsy Ross did exactly what it was intended to do. It was intended to create patriotism for women um, around a white female figure. And it's interwoven into American society at this point. I think that my hope is that writings like this are continually being discovered and continue to be written so that we can really uh, focus our attention on the women of the revolution who were not fictitious, because there are, just as we've spoken about, with actual women like Phillis Wheatley and women like Abigail Adams, who were real people whose stories are just as important and need to be told to have the right lens on what our American history truly is. Thank you, guys.